advisors, I'm super excited to introduce you to Elements in Real Life. This is a series of videos we're putting together to help you better understand how to do financial planning with Elements. Each week, Elements advisors will take real client questions and show you how they use the vital signs to provide real advice. So check it out, and of course, don't forget to like and subscribe.
I'm Scott Frank with Stone Steps Financial.
I'm Eric Rodriguez with Wealth Builders LLC.
And today we are going to answer a client question using the Element Scorecard. What are we going to answer today, Eric?
Well, what's going to be fun to talk about is a client wants to know what they should do with a $1 million stock grant that just vested. So it's going to be a fun conversation today using the scorecard to determine what they should be focused on moving forward.
Awesome. Let's dive in. What kind of context can you give us about this client before we look at the scorecard? Because obviously you and I are both like life planners, so we believe in kind of that money is a tool and it should be used to help them live a great life. So give us the background.
Yeah, so client is recently divorced. Client is 38 years old. Client also has 2 children, 1, 3, 1, 5. This client is a very high income earner, earns over $1 million per year in salary, plus
Whoa.
an additional, depending on the year, an extra 500 to 750 in bonuses and other forms of equity compensation. The statement of financial purpose for this client is just to protect the financial security of their kids and just to be able to live life with intention and potentially retire sooner than the typical 65, maybe potentially, mid 50s or something like that, because there is also some health concerns with this individual as there's a really bad health history in the family.
Yeah.
So the whole conversation of, hey, let's save money so you can retire 30 years from now or whatever,
Right.
kind of goes out the door because they want to live in the now. They want to experience life now with their family and create memories at the same time, secure their future in case they do live a long time. So that's what we're dealing with today, Scott.
Okay, cool. So just to encapsulate that then, really high income right now, doing really, really well. Questions that I'd want to know about are like, is this income going to last forever? Or is this just a peak few years that we want to be mindful of? How much money do they need to live? We'll get into that in the scorecard. But health is the key and living now. So making sure the family's okay for the future, financial freedom comes, pardon me, but living in the now, and it sounds like probably putting some money in the budget toward health and health span and lifespan is going to matter as well.
Absolutely. And so what we're going to show in a few minutes or a few seconds here, we're going to show their Element scorecard. And this is the scorecard that I initially received from the client. And before I share the screen and we walk through the scorecard, really the scorecard helps us answer 4 questions. 1, are they taking the right amount of risk? Do they have the right mix of assets? Number 3, how much wealth do they need to make work optional? And lastly, are they using their income wisely?
Yeah.
So want our listeners to keep those 4 questions in mind as we dive into the scorecard.
Yeah. And, you and I being advisors, the thing that I've found to be so helpful about using Elements is if you start with those 4 questions, you figure out what you need to go focus on for the client to help them really improve their financial life, which is really what this is all about.
So what we're looking at here for our listeners, we're looking at the Element scorecard here. And again, the question is, I have $1 million of vested stock that I'm going to sell. What should I be doing with that $1 million?
Right.
So Scott, I'll turn the table to you, if you will. What are some things that you look at here that should require immediate attention before we even talk about what to do with that $1 million?
Yeah. So things that when I see this scorecard right away, I immediately look at the top line was that question you said before, what risks am I taking? Am I taking the appropriate amount of risks? And knowing that they want to build their net worth to be financially free, I'm wondering why they have so little invested in the stock market. An 8% equity rate's way too low. especially if you're young, to create financial freedom. The next thing I'm seeing is insurance rate being 4. I want to dive into what that number actually entails and how much life insurance does this client have and how much disability? Because if they're the sole breadwinner for those 2 little ones with a really high income, I want to make sure they're protected. So I want to look at that. The next line is really income. Now, income's looking at savings rate. Burn rate's basically how much do you spend in a year. Burn rate and debt rate together are your total spend, right? And then taxes. But if we take those 4 together, we're only at what, 60%.
60.
So 40% of her income isn't being allocated somewhere. So let's look at where we should put it and why. And I'm guessing that's not including this lump sum one-time $1 million either, right?
Correct.
So my thought is I'd want to do probably run like a Holistic plan to see what's our tax rate going to be this year, because it's probably going to be 37% or higher if they're in California. Right. With that $1 million of income, they're going to have like potentially $2.5, $2.7 million of income if that equity grant was a one-time grant on top of their normal pay. And then let's look at where we should spread out the other cash. And then from there, the bottom line, the bottom row, we're looking at where are assets placed and how much liquid term do we have. So liquid term, qualified term, real estate term, and total term. If you like, can you hover over LT?
Yep.
So if you click it.
Oh, whoops. Yeah.
Does it do anything? No, it doesn't do anything.
Not on this one. Not on this one. This is a screenshot.
Oh, it's a screenshot. Cool. Yes. So it would normally tell, if we click on it, it'll tell us how much they spend per year. Like how much is she spending per year or per month?
She's spending roughly around 30,000 a month.
So 360 a year. So like you can quickly see how much an asset she has. Just take 360 times 2.3 and there's how much she has liquid. So she looks pretty safe from a liquidity standpoint, which is awesome. That's great. I just want to make sure she's putting money to work in the equities markets and investing to be safe and okay. Those are the things I'm seeing up front end, but what did I miss?
You know, I think obviously one of the things that I see as a huge red flag is there's not a lot of qualified term, which a qualified term is basically the amount of qualified retirement assets this individual has. So they're real heavy on cash and real estate equity. So this person has multiple real estate properties. So it's fantastic, great assets, but also really low on the actual, QT side of things.
Totally.
The other thing I always like to use at Wealth Builders, we have this rule. It's called the Monopoly rule. Scott, you and I have talked about this before, but before we talk about investments and, comprehensive tax planning and all the fun stuff, we really have to make sure we cover our fundamentals, especially if we have kids, right? So do we have the proper life insurance in place, which obviously here we don't. We have liquidity here, but how much of this is actually dedicated for an emergency fund, right? We want to have, for this individual, we want to have at least 6 months of their expenses in an account specifically named emergency. Then what we want to do is we want to make sure that, especially at this income level, that this individual is maxing out their 401k. In my opinion, at least pre-tax 401k, but in general, just max out your 401k, get the match.
Oh yeah, for this person for sure, right? And if they have an HSA, they could do that too.
Absolutely, yes. And then if there is a little bit of debt, but if there is any credit card debt, we want to make sure that clients, pay off the higher interest credit card debt. So once these things are covered, then we can move on. So just like in the game of Monopoly, you can pass go once you do certain things. Well, you can't pass go in the financial planning world, at least in my firm, until you just do those basic things. And I'll add one more thing too, to someone who has children, is we have to make sure that you have an estate plan in place. So that would be one of the first questions I ask too, is like, hey, do you have an estate plan? Do you have a will? Do you have a trust, et cetera? And so those are kind of some initial concerns that I would have, with this client.
Eric, I love that. So basically making sure they have enough life insurance. And so basically of the $1 million, I'm just going to be really simple and make the assumption that 50% of that money is going to go to taxes this year, that it was just an RSU income that they sold immediately. Can I make that assumption? Is that safe?
Sure. Go for it.
But if that's what happens, right, they're going to have $500,000 left. So where are they going to put it? Because that's kind of what we're trying to answer. Essentially what you're saying is, hey man, 180,000 is going to go to an online savings account or like a treasury money market fund to basically be a protection for you. Okay. And so then there's going to be like what, 320,000 left. Where should it go?
So I think because they want to have experiences and she's okay not putting everything towards savings and investments, I think we need to have some kind of travel account or some type of
Awesome.
some account where they can actually spend the money. This individual also has family that does not live in America. They live in different parts of the world. So they travel a lot and they're going to be world travelers, and they want to expose the children to the different cultures that the parents live in. Parents are not together. So one lives in the UK, one lives in Asia. So
Awesome.
so I think having some type of travel account or fun account, if you will, is necessary. So I would put at least $100,000 there just to have over the long term that they can pool to have these experiences. And then
to your point, this was a one-time transaction. So this is like, hey, let's go fill up that emergency fund, but let's have this like funding fun account for 100K in it. So you just get permission granted to go do stuff and not worry about using normal like money.
Exactly. I would definitely max out the HSA if that's available. If not available, then I would carve out at least maybe 30, 50,000, put it into a trust, brokerage, individual taxable account, label that goal strictly for healthcare for the future. And maybe have it in the, balanced portfolio, 50-50 or something like that.
Sure.
And we'll get into risk tolerance in a second. But then obviously once we've accounted for tax and all that, the rest of it, I think we have to have a conversation around this equity rate and why there's so much money in cash and high yield savings. Because typically when I see something like this, it's really just the client's not properly educated on an investment strategy.
Yeah.
And there's so many finfluencers out there that are just talking about high yield savings accounts, and that's the best thing you should do. And of course, plus this year, 2023 was like the most traded money markets were like the most traded asset class. I think there was like trillions of dollars that got moved to money markets this year. So I think there just has to be a conversation around how to use the law of compound interest in your favor, how to implement, in my opinion, an evidence-based portfolio where you're not going to have to worry about the ebbs and flows in the markets and just having that long-term approach. So I would set up a separate investment account labeled in the name of the trust that she would create, and really just put this money to work because you and I both know, Scott, you're not going to get wealthy saving money in a high yield savings account.
No.
You're going to get wealthy by actually investing your money and having that money compound over time, especially 100%. As a 38. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now.
If she's already maxing out her 401k and the HSA, that's awesome. Another thing, now obviously we're so late, this is going to run early next year, I think. So like when this is running, you're looking at this for the client and you're going, okay, maybe at, a lot of the larger tech companies, if she's at a tech company or just bigger companies in general, now will allow you to do mega backdoor Roths as well. Mm-hmm. And because she's so low on qualified term, maybe you do take some of the funds to do that, right? And you could even just supplement the cash flow from your paycheck. You could backfill it with this cash. Does that make sense?
Totally. And also with this individual, they also offer deferred compensation plans, which could also be an option if
that's huge,
especially at that income level, right? If you're making 1.5, $1.7 million a year, even after tax, you still have a significant amount where you could actually do all of it. You could do all the things when it comes to deferring tax and whatnot. So that's another thing that they might want to consider is getting involved and enrolling in the deferred comp plan if that makes sense. So
absolutely, especially when you're younger and you don't want to stay in that space forever. Mm-hmm. It allows you, especially oftentimes you can build up deferred comp so it pays out over a number of years. Mm-hmm. So you can literally just be like, I want to be out at 50, and so I want those gap years to be funding me. And you can literally lay out what's this thing going to be worth for you around age 50 plus that draw to get a sense of what are you going to make every year. It's pretty awesome, really powerful.
Absolutely. But I think and kind of just to wrap things up, I think what I'm most excited about with this client is just being able to give them clarity around, hey, these are some gaps in your plan that we need to fill.
Yeah.
These are, or I like to call them blind spots. These are the blind
Right.
spots I see, and the element scorecard gives us those instant blind spots. And I know a lot of other planners use like a SWOT analysis or what have you, which you could totally do. But this in general just streamlines that. You could tell right here what their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are.
No, I totally agree, man. And the thing I love about it is that once you identify those things, we're going to watch these numbers change over time with the client. So you're going to watch equity rate go from 8 to 70%, right? And you're going to watch like the insurance score go up, and you're going to watch those numbers of years go up. And it basically gives the client in the present tense a better understanding of how they're doing and how they're building wealth. And I love that versus me trying to tell them what inflation is going to be next year or what the rate of return is going to be next year, because I don't actually know.
Exactly.
So, what did you think about that? We'd love to hear your thoughts about how we answered that question. Do you think that you would have answered it differently? Comment below and let us know. Now, if you have a scorecard that you want us to dissect, or a client question you want answered using elements but aren't sure how, send us the client's one-page plan to cs@getelements.com, and we hope to catch you next time.